You got the recording sign, Jay?
Yes.
You still agree to the consent recording this podcast
Yes, I do.
and the distribution of this podcast on various different platforms?
Yes.
All right, everyone. Welcome, Jay. Jay, listen, I'm so happy to see you, man. I mean, it's
Me?
been a long time, but I'll just share this before we start talking about anything that we trained together at John Jock's. Shout out to John Jock, everybody. And we had some privates, and it was kind of private because I feel like we were rolling and we would train and then we would stop and we would talk about something. And I felt like you weren't just a really good jiu-jitsu instructor and practitioner. I felt like I got to know you as a person, and I felt like, wow, Jay's just a really good guy. And I try to, as I've gotten older, keep good people close to me. Try to keep in touch with them with that. But anyway, tell people a little bit about stuff who may not know who you are.
I appreciate that very much. As our host said, my name's Jay Zeballos. I'm a jiu-jitsu instructor, full-time now. I train under Jean-Jacques Machado here in Woodland Hills, California. I've been at this school pretty much almost half my life. I think this will be about 25 years that I've been there. And I meet some pretty amazing people. It's the kind of the benefit of what I get to do, whether I'm just training or whether I actually get the privilege of teaching people. Just make great connections, and you learn a lot about not only yourself but other people, and it's just one continuous life lesson. And I couldn't be happier. That's why it's so awesome to reconnect with you after all these years, because it's been a minute.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had a pretty good discussion off camera, but it's we were talking about like the internet age, being able to keep in contact. It's almost like there's no excuse nowadays to keep in contact with people, even though I don't feel like it's still easy. Like you still have to put the effort in, but it's there. It can be done.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at it like this. I struggle sometimes keeping up. Life gets busy, and I have so many things that I'm working on. So it's hard to put in that time, because it's easy to get sucked down that rabbit hole. I remember when I first joined Facebook, I mean, I'd spend hours on there just because you meet people and you're going through their pictures, friends that I haven't seen in so long. And then it just kind of, you start getting on this treadmill of life and just working, and then you get back onto Facebook and it's like, oh my God, so-and-so's birthday was last week and I missed this and I missed that, and you're trying to catch up. And so it can be hard, but I think the occasional, like of a photo or a little thumbs up, just letting them know that you're watching. Because the reality is, the ones that are like there, because I mean, how many Facebook friends do you have that you've never even met? I know. Yeah. I only accept people that obviously that I know, or if you're in the jiu-jitsu community, or 6 degrees of separation, we're friends of a friend and there's some sort of connection there, but I don't take random friends. So there's a lot of people that I don't really interact with at all, but the ones that I've physically have met and I know, I always make it a point to try my best to just, hey, I'm still here. I may not say much, I may not reach out much, but that little like or that little thumbs up is just letting you know that I see you, and and I hope you're well.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And another thing that I do, and I bring it up because the holidays just passed, is that I think I must have spent, I don't know, at least 2 hours just kind of scrolling through and trying to find people and say, hey, happy holidays. Or, it's kind of big events. Like I said, if I could catch it on their birthday, I'll try to say something, just a short little message, but thing is, I spent a lot of time on the holidays doing that. And I sent a lot of messages, and now it's been a few weeks, and I look back and it's like, wow, I still missed a whole a lot of people,
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's one of the things that I try to do a little bit more, especially around the holidays. And it's going to sound kind of bad, but for me, it's important. I'd go down my feed, and if I saw somebody post something and they either had no likes or just a couple, not much interaction, those are the people I was going after. I'd comment, I'd write something, I'd interact. Hey, I hope you're well. Even if it's somebody I don't even really know.
Yeah.
It's like, because you can just kind of doing what we do and knowing how, even though we're kind of a divisive world right now, people still yearn for that human connection. And social media is not going to always give it to you, but there's still something to be said about, hey, somebody actually sees me here and is acknowledging me. I mean, I don't think you ever outgrow that feeling for
No.
having that validation or that encouragement from somebody. We grow up with it with our parents, but then once we become adults and we're on our own, it's rare. I mean, you're blessed if you have a boss that tells you, hey, good job, I'm really proud of you, or anything like that. Nobody gets encouragement anymore.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important.
Yeah. And, I studied psychology for a long time, and I have a couple of friends who are psychologists. I have a friend who's a shaman, and we come on here and we talk about stuff like this, and just being acknowledged, the simple fact of being acknowledged, someone just saying, hey, I see you, psychologically has such a good thing. But let's go into like a spiritual thing. I think what you're doing, some people may not agree with what I'm saying, and I can't prove it. It's not science. It's like I'm saying, it's just a feeling. I think what you're doing is sending good energy out there, and I think that's what the world needs, because if, like you said, we learned this as children, right? How to, get approval, attention, stuff like that. And then you leave your house. And that's if you had a good house. How many people didn't grow up in good situations, right? But now you leave that, you're an adult on your own. You're gonna get that, whatever. Let's call it a fix somehow, some way. Some people have learned how to do it in a good way, and some people do it in a negative way. They do things purposely to bring some sort of negative attention or energy upon themselves, just because they want to be seen, they want to be heard in some type of way.
No, absolutely. And I do believe that. I believe wholeheartedly. I mean, I look at it like this, you can call it, of course, prayer. You have what is commonly known now as the law of attraction, or just like you said, just energy. I mean, I firmly believe that. And I firmly believe that, declaration is a big part of our of the circle of energy that surrounds all of us. And to make it easy, I mean, how many people do you know? Because I always just try to tell people, it's a huge part of our teaching component, but what you declare, that's your truth. If you say, I can't do this, well, you've just declared that you can't.
Right.
I tell our children all the time, I'm like, in our youth classes, they'll say, well, I can't do this, Professor J, it's too hard. I'm like, you have to understand something in here. If you say I can't, then you can't.
Yeah. But
if you say I can, then you will. It just, you have to put out that affirmation. So when you work with people, and this comes from myself, like how does somebody progress in an art that is so incredibly challenging, and it can break you mentally? If you already have it in your head that this is impossible, well, I mean, God help you being with the wrong teacher, because they're just going to say, well, then why are you here? Why are you wasting my time? But it's having that, it's having that encouragement and that idea that the training itself is going to be extremely challenging. It's going to be like nothing else you've ever experienced. But the affirmation you're going to get from your coaches and your teammates, the ones that are going to encourage you, point out all the little victories you've made while you're training, that's going to help increase your ability to progress and develop your skill set. So yeah, that all begins and ends with what's coming out of our mouth, and so we're I'm very much that way. Like I never say the word problem in my house. My wife and I both always say, if there's something that's going on, it's always a challenge.
Yeah.
And then what it is, you just have to know, like, hey, you know what? I mean, I can get through this. I never say that it's insurmountable or it's impossible or anything like that, because it's never easy, but you can get through it. You just have to believe. I mean, that's what it is. You have to believe, and you have to have
The power of belief is and like I'm saying, I'm not specifically talking about like a spirituality or religion, just in anything, like you're saying, like, it's, if you come from a negative spot, like something they would teach us would be, you think something, you say something, like you verbally say it, like you're saying, like you declare it, well, then you do it. It's kind of the next thing. Like we talk about analyzing people and looking at them like behaviorally, right? You're gonna think something, you're gonna say it usually, and then you're gonna do it. So with my kids, because I'm raising two young ones right now, kids say this all the time, what you're saying, oh, I can't do this, I can't ride a bike. That was the thing with my son last summer. I can't ride a bike. In 1 week, I showed him how to ride a bike. You know what I mean? Like, oh wow, you really can't do it, right? But a lot of times I would correct them, and I would just say, you're saying you can't, but what you mean is like, yet, like right now, you haven't been able to do it.
yes,
And I try to teach that if you keep trying, if you practice, and if you just give yourself that sort of space to fail, right? Because the kids kind of think like, well, if I try this one time, can't do it, that's it. It's like, no, you can't do it right now. Okay, you got to practice. And then he started to see it, where I would time him. I would run with him holding the back of the bike, right? And then look, I let it go for 2 seconds. You were doing it for 2 seconds, and then you were doing it for 10 seconds. And now I'm not holding you anymore. So giving them like those incremental positivities of saying, look, you see how you're improving, you're trending, to use a cool word nowadays. You're trending in the positive direction.
Yeah, or like going back to that, I tell some of our children, more of the teenagers, but I'm like, look, how many of you guys are gamers? You buy a new game, you start it, the first level, first round, you get wiped out. You just throw the game away.
Yeah, no, they're okay with that. When it's a game, they're okay with that.
You're gonna be there all night until you get past that level, and then guess what? The next level, twice as hard. You're gonna say, oh, it's too much, it's too hard. No, you persevere because you know that it's possible. Now, gaming is fun, but I always look at it like this: jiu-jitsu is hard at first, but when you start to figure it out, it's fun.
Yeah.
So, but you gotta kind of, you gotta pay your dues. You gotta just, keep pedaling, and you'll get there.
Yeah. So let's talk about jiu-jitsu, man. I mean, well, jiu-jitsu / COVID. How were you guys affected with COVID, man? Because I figure it had to be rough, because it was rough over here. I know guys who train here, and just recently they shut like everything down again. So guys are trying to like sneak off and train, because you could only have like a certain amount of people together to do anything.
Yeah. When it first hit, I mean, I think the whole world. I know we shut down straight away for the first month. None of us left our houses.
Wow.
Because I mean, we were all. I mean, I'll admit it. We were all scared. You just you hear about this virus and what it's killing people, but as time went on, and we kept the school closed. We had to. Most of our student body, I'd say probably at least 2/3, they were just like, look, we're good. We're going to keep supporting the school. We just can't come in. So yeah, the academy was empty for quite some time. But it was funny for me personally, like it's my first time, and for as long as I could remember, that I didn't have a uniform on and that I couldn't work out.
Yeah.
So I hope Professor Mark Armstrong, one of our other instructors, he's like my brother, and he was healthy and I was healthy. So I have a gym in my house. He'd come over here and, we just work out. And then little by little, I'd start getting messages from people. I want to train privately. I want to do something. I can't sit here at home. It's driving me crazy. So eventually we reopened. I think it was later that summer. And then the state of California went into a full-blown lockdown. So we had to shut down again. And then, little by little, I started building up private clientele, because I had so many people just telling me, look, I don't leave my house. I telecommute. I'm living very responsibly. I'm not going out. I'm not being around people. So, and I'll get tested early. So I started building a client base because of COVID, which was just crazy. And then as time went on, we started to see like, the only way I can explain it, California, which is just crazy to even think about, the freeways were empty for so long.
Wow.
When I would drive, it was just empty. And that, to me, that was like, no, people are listening. People are staying home. Well, towards the end of 2020, the freeways got packed again, even though we were locked down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, people are they've had enough,
Yeah.
And the vaccines certainly helped, that seemed to ease the fears of a lot of people. I mean, all these things create division. You do one thing and then you're going to have people that are just going to be divided, but it did help. And then as we rolled into 2021, we started to resurrect the school, and everything kind of got back rolling. And it was good on one hand because, it was great seeing students coming back. It was tough on the other hand because we saw the collateral damage. There are a lot of gyms in our area that
Didn't
went
survive.
away. Which is very, very hard. But never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined we'd have this pandemic, where something so deadly keeps us from living our lives. It's been a crazy thing. So, but we're getting through it.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think you just hit the nail on the head when you said that something keeps us from living our lives. And when you were talking about the highway, you said that you think people are just kind of over it. And that's my opinion. So anyone who's listening, regardless of how you feel, whether you're pro-vaccination or anti-vaccination, or should we just open everything up, or should we keep more restrictions? I think regardless of what your view is on that stance, right, that most people are exactly what you said. I think people are just they're fed up. Like, look, I just want to live my life, and they're willing to take the risk. So I would say to any politician out there who's, that's a tough spot to be a politician, I think, right now, because if you say left, everyone's going to say right. And if you say right, everyone's going to say left. And you could see that they're fighting over. So we shouldn't be fighting over this. We should be trying to work together. But, it's politicians. It's what they do. But I would urge anyone in that type of fear to say, listen, these people are fed up. We have to consider that when we make these decisions. And I don't know if they are. I don't know that. Like, you could have the best idea, kind of like your instructor. You've dealt with people, right? All different type of people, myself included. I could have this idea of what I want to teach my students or what I want them to do. But if they can't accept that idea or something, like, it's like you just got to include the thought, the feeling that people have. And listen, I lost my dad to COVID. You know what I mean? But I understand like what's going on. I think that whatever we're trying to do, I don't know if the politicians are in touch with the people, is what I'm saying. I'm going on a rant, but
no, but it's true. It's such a slippery slope because I've been very fortunate. I have not lost like loved ones to it, but some of my closest friends, you being one of them, have lost family members, and I readily acknowledge that it's an illness, and it can be lethal to certain people. I think that it has definitely changed our world in the sense that I think it's a big wake-up call for living more responsibly.
Yes.
I believe me, even with what I do and everything, I still like we Instacart pretty much everything. I don't really go to grocery stores. I avoid crowded areas. I mean, there's been a lot of sacrifice to my own life just out of respect for this illness. I don't want to get sick. I'm not going to stand here and say, well, it doesn't exist. No,
right.
It's real. But the one thing I always try to explain to people, it's like, and this is common sense, personal hygiene. When you go out in public, wash your hands, man,
cover your mouth.
Cover your mouth. and then, eat better. I take,
Exercise, yes.
yeah, I mean, I have been on a cocktail of vitamins and supplements since I turned 40. I'm 54 now. Um, and I take this stuff regularly for my immune system. It's not medication, it's just vitamins
Right.
and things to help my performance in jiu-jitsu and just help my immune system. And then when COVID hit, I just amped all that up just
Mm.
to keep my immune system strong. Eat clean, as clean as you can, just live healthy. But again, you tell me, oh, we're going to go to a concert or something. Not to step on anybody's toes, because I have friends that do that, but it's just like, no, I'm good. I'm going to just stay home. Let's
Yeah.
put it this way. It's like, I used to do all these crazy things. I used to ski. I used to have a street bike. I used to play ice hockey. I used to do all this cool stuff. I stopped it all when I became a jiu-jitsu instructor, because I just told myself I'm not going to do anything that could jeopardize my work.
Yeah.
So I look at our world today that way. Like, I have a responsibility to the students that I work with to stay as healthy as possible. So if that means for now, hey, no running off to Disneyland and, and putting myself in a situation where I potentially get sick, I'll gladly do that.
Yeah, I see that. So something we talked about offline is I wanted to really get into, because I'm really interested in this topic, which is the evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And like you said, you've been doing it for 25 years, so it's a lot more than me. So can you talk about that? Like, can you remember the first time you stepped onto the mat and today? Like, what is the major changes you've seen in these 25 years?
Yeah, no, I'll never forget the first time I stepped onto the mat. For me, I was just like pretty much anybody. I think back then, it was just you saw the ease in which, Hoist Gracie and the Gracie family, they were able to just neutralize an aggressor. It didn't matter the size. And that was the magic that we were all looking for. So it's not so much that I want to learn how to fight. I just want to learn how to better protect myself. Simple as that. So I've always looked at my training in that capacity. Like, okay, if I'm on my back, make sure that I'm always, as we interviewed Master Hickson Gracie recently on our own podcast, and he said something very quickly, but I'll never forget this. He goes, students are prepared for a choke. They're not prepared for a punch.
Mm.
And so my training back then was, and to this day is always like that. I mean, I'll fluctuate and kind of dance back and forth between the core art that I like to practice, and then sometimes the game, the sport, which
Okay.
is super fun. I don't want to take that away. It's super fun. I love the evolution of where the techniques are going in terms of the sport aspect. But for me, it's always been about the core art. And then you start to compartmentalize the different approaches to training. And that's the thing that I just try to do as an instructor, more subconsciously than anything else, is make sure the student gets the base. Then they can start to compartmentalize. Well, I want to do more no-gi, or I want to just do more of the tournament stuff.
Right. Would you say though that there's more of an emphasis on the sport aspect of jiu-jitsu since you first started to now? Because that's what I've experienced in my
Oh
short time.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's definitely the game. It's
Yeah.
definitely the game. It's what's not to like about that. When you look at the techniques and you watch, it's like magic. You're watching
Yeah.
these people do moves, and it's like, wow, that's really cool. And man, I'm far from a hater. I
Yeah.
think it's a cool part of the game, and I've never been one of like, well, I only do this and I don't do that. No, it's me. It's all part of it. But as long as, like I said, as long as you understand that all these techniques have their place in the art. Best way I can explain it, this is a story I always share with people. If you play the game, and that's what your training is based on, that's what your natural muscle memory is based on.
Mm-hmm.
If at the back of your mind, or if maybe you feel like, well, as long as I train jujitsu, I can defend myself. And then you get into a situation where you're put on your back, or you're put in a position
In a
and
real
your
street
body,
fight.
yes, and then your body instinctively starts to do what it would naturally do in a tournament.
Yep.
That's a rude wake-up call. So a friend of mine, one of my best mates, as I like to call him, his name's Stewie Molden. He's based down in Bendigo in Australia. He shared with me a story about a weapons expert, a guy who's brilliant with gun disarms. And
I know the story. I was going to share it with you.
About how he disarmed the gun and gave the gun back
Like 3 times. Yeah. Gave it back to him like 3 times. Yeah.
That's my point. You know, that he practices that way. So when he's actually assaulted and the perpetrator pulls a gun on him, he does the gun disarm, but then starts to hand the gun back,
because that's the way he trained. Yep.
Yeah. So I look at jujitsu that way. It's like, as long as, and you know, I mean, I always tell people, look, do what makes you happy. You know, because at the end of the day, you're doing this for yourself. But for me, because I always feel like, you know, there is an obligation that I have, that I want to make sure the students understand. I don't teach the student my jujitsu. I teach them jujitsu, and then they kind of make it their own.
Yeah.
So I have some students that are like, I want to learn how to do, you know, the leg drag, or I want to learn how to do this or do that. And I'm like, okay, you know, these are the tournament kind of tournament style moves. And then, you know, we might branch off into something else, and they'll ask me, they're like, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And I give them the answer that I gave you. It's never about, it's not, this is bad or this is wrong. No, it's just understand it where it fits into the art, and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
But you just have to, you know, that you know,
mindful. Yeah.
Yes.
So I agree with that. I think that some of that stuff that I see out there is like amazing. Like I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? But for me, I'm very much a practical person. And I think because part of that is that the way I schedule my life, I don't have a lot of time for other stuff. I want to just get the meat and potatoes in, you know what I mean? So I really just want to train more like self-defense. I don't care about the tournaments and stuff like that. That's great. If you want to do it, like you said, I'm all for it. It's just not for me. Some of the stuff that I see guys do, I'm like, man, I hope you won't do that in a real fight, because I know the story that you're talking about. That blew I saw the video of that guy doing that. I was a young man when that happened. A guy, I'll explain a little bit. A guy was at a store. Somebody pointed a gun at them. The guy was a cop or something like that. He takes the gun, right? Real expert, like Bruce Lee stuff, you know, just took it, but handed the gun right back to the guy. Went, oh no, took it again, and then handed it right back to him. He had to do it he had to disarm the guy like 3 times. So when I was a young man, I played football, and we trained. It was the practice is going to be like a game. We're going to move game speed. We're going to train the way we fight, which is what we do in the military. Because like you said, there's something about your brain, especially when that adrenaline, like this is war, this is life or death or whatever, where your front part of your brain is less active. That more like instinctive caveman thing is happening. So muscle memory comes into play. And that's what you're going to do. And I had a problem where a lot of guys, when I was training a while back, I think before I went to John Jocks, the inverted guard was a big thing. And they would do it when guys were standing up, and they would like be inverted. And I'm like, you know, you just put your head right next to that guy's foot, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that guy plays soccer, he's about to hit a goal.
I know, you know, and so but I mean, you know, I've never been a judo practitioner, but it's my understanding that that's kind of what happened to judo. You know, judo came in and as a core art, and then as it became popular and got into the Olympics, they just started stripping away at a lot of what you could do for the sake of the game.
That's for wrestling too, from what I understand.
Yeah. See, so I just look at it like that. It's not you know, on one hand, I think I mean, I always study it. because I used to compete like crazy. So even though I competed with guys closer to my age or at my age, there was always the occasional, older guy that loved inverting or playing the what I kind of refer to as the young man's game.
Yeah.
So you have to be, knowledgeable and aware of it.
Yes.
So, but yeah, it's fun, but again, it's just kind of know its place. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. So if I remember, also going back, like I said, you got 25 years. It seemed to me, and if you disagree, let me know, that jujitsu was more of like an every guy sport. Like you didn't have to be like a gym rat. But I've noticed in the years that that's changed. A lot of the guys who are in the gym are like doing CrossFit. They're doing, whatever. Have you felt that change as well?
Oh yeah, I see it. I see it all the time. Again, this goes back to that compartmentalization. We don't teach jujitsu for a 6-minute match,
Hmm.
you know, or another way of thinking about it. John Jock has said something along the lines like, I don't teach jujitsu for 3 minutes. I teach it for 30 years.
Wow.
So if you rely on the technique, you know that the technique will work. Sometimes it may take a little time, but if you want to get it done now, meaning you want to compete, or you're just looking for an edge, you level up with your athleticism, your fitness. That's why, if you want to compete, you have to do all that. Even though we always talk about strength isn't really, I believe it is a factor,
Yeah.
but it is not your primary factor,
Mhm.
So there are a lot of guys that do that. And, hell yeah, it's if you have it, use it. But I also know that it can be a crutch.
Yes.
If you're not, if you lack, and this is not a generalization on people. This is just like throughout my time, I've actually experienced this. And it's a little sad because I've been at it so long. There were guys that either I came up with or they were a little bit ahead of me. They were just physical monsters. And they had good technique, but I felt more of their physicality than the technique. And as we've gotten older, that physicality is fading.
Yeah.
So you're left with, I don't like to use the word broken, but kind of like not really defined technique.
You probably learned bad habits because you relied on strength or you relied on speed or something. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I always just, I use the analogy from the movie Jurassic Park, how they talked about how they made the dinosaurs with the frog DNA,
Uh-huh.
because they had the dinosaur DNA, but it had gaps.
Right.
And when you start training jujitsu, you learn the technique. Everybody kind of learns the technique relatively quick, but to be able to implement it, that takes time.
Mhm.
So instead of like just letting the process happen, I'll interject strength. I'll fill the gaps with strength, and I can make the technique work.
Right.
But then what happens, you get older, the strength goes away, you're back to that broken
Yeah.
DNA
That's a good
technique.
analogy. I like it.
So that's kind of what happens. And like I said, I mean, it's great if you do strength and conditioning. I think it's a really valuable asset to your training. Just don't let it take over. It's so easy for us to just push comes to shove. Oh, that last bit I need, I'll just put a little physicality in there and it'll work. It will, but at some point it won't. And then the hard part with that is when the realization that I'm not what I once was. But if your technique, like, again, I keep saying the same thing, but 25 years with John Jock, he always talks about this. It's like your strength will betray you. Your technique will never betray you. Your strength will go away.
Your cardio, your speed, your strength, yeah, all of that. And the interesting with that is that I've trained with some older black belts, and you could tell they're not what they probably were. Like I met them when they were older, but me being younger and more physical, I probably dominated them position wise, but I couldn't tap them. I couldn't, you know what I mean? So they defended themselves. And if you translate that to a street attack, someone attacks them, you know, if someone attacks you and they cannot take you out, then you win.
Yeah.
A draw
Yeah.
to a person like that is a win.
Yeah.
And that was all
Yeah.
technique, just
Sure.
understanding the game, you know?
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, that's what I refer to that as becoming more tactical than technical.
Yeah.
You know, you become a little bit more savvy. How do I manage if somebody has power and athleticism and all of that on me, I've already lost if I try to snap that back.
Right.
So I'll almost encourage your aggression and rely on my technique to protect me. And then there's always that magic sound that every older grappler wants to hear from the younger grappler. And that's the panting. That's the, okay, now he's closer to my level. Now we can play.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely a more cerebral approach to your training. Just just thinking smarter.
Yeah. Let's switch it up. Let's talk about something I noticed because I've had injuries. You know, jiu-jitsu used to be known, I guess it still is, as the gentle art, but I don't feel it's that gentle anymore, man. I feel like there's so much. People are walking around with bad necks, bad elbows, bad everything. Like, how do we, you know, encourage people to keep training and be a part of this and not, you know, touch on this aspect of jiu-jitsu? I tell people that, you know, there's different types of guys at the gym. There's a guy who's going to go in there and every time he trains, he's at Abu Dhabi, man. Every match he goes into is 100%. And listen, and if you're a guy that you're trying to make this like your career, like you're going to be an MMA fighter, you're going to be a guy who gets sponsored and you're going to compete. Okay, so I kind of get that. But I would say 80% of the guys at most gyms, I don't know about, you know, some of the higher level gyms, are just guys who want to train, learn some self-defense. So I tell people, look, if you're probably going to feel like your progression is a little bit slower, but if you're mindful about what you're doing, how you're training, you could do a lot to preserve your body. Like if you know this guy, every time you wrestle, he's just going to crank your neck. When he asks you to roll, say, you know what, I'm going to roll with someone else, or there's things that you could do to preserve yourself is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I'm kind of known as the injury whisperer because I have a stable of private clients, and 2/3 of them have pretty severe physical limitations due to injuries.
I did when I started training with you. Yeah, I had my knee. Yeah.
Yeah, that I have a gentleman with a severely arthritic hip, one with a bad shoulder, another one with a bad neck. You know, and all our training with each is, again, want to make sure that, I mean, because what is jiu-jitsu? Like any martial arts, self-defense. Like we're gonna formulate everything. We're gonna work everything to protect your afflicted areas and to make sure that those don't get hurt. If those don't get hurt, you're always in the game. So all the techniques aside, anytime you feel like there is a threat, and it doesn't even have to be a submission, just maybe weight or pressure, you have to let that go. I'd rather, just for argument's sake, I would rather you give up your back, roll into the mount, let them mount you, and work from there, than put too much stress on the knee that's going to apply pressure to your hip, which is going to take you out of jiu-jitsu and God what else for quite some time. So it's really, really important, you know, when you're training, especially as you get older. It's just injury management, saying no to overly aggressive people, and even the ones that you want to wrestle with, understanding that not every battle needs to be won.
Checking the ego, basically.
Yeah, you know, it's like if you know that you like, I mean, I have I wouldn't say it's weak, but I have a temperamental lower back. Sometimes it'll go out on me. It seems the last couple of years it's been a little bit more temperamental than normal. I have an amazing chiropractor, but I still have to be very. So I'm just, you know, when I train, if I feel at all that what I'm about to do is going to create a situation, I let it go. I make sure I protect my back first, and then I'll deal with whatever I got to deal with. So I kind of look at it like that. I just don't, I think that, you know, when it comes to our overall wellness, that trumps everything else. I'm not worried about tapping the guy. I'm not worried about sweeping him. I'm not worried about defending anything. If I have a problematic area, that comes first. Because hopefully you've never experienced this, but I always tell people, any day that I can go into the locker room and take off my rash guard and not scream in pain, that's a good day.
Yeah, I like that.
I, you know, straining a rib muscle and trying to take my rash guard off. You know, I remember my shoulder getting tweaked one time, and you know, that pain of just dealing with training and just trying to get through it, you know. So you have to just think the bigger picture, the bigger game. It's not, everything is not always, you know, you tap me, I tap you. No, it's, I want to make sure I can do this, have fun, be safe, but not get hurt.
Yeah. It's chess. You got to think several moves ahead. You might, you know, win a battle today and end up losing a war later because you're freaking threw your back out, your neck or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far, because we're coming towards the end here, is there any innovative training techniques, whether on the mat jiu-jitsu or off the mat kind of gym or something like that, that you see, or maybe supplements or something to help prolong or to prevent injuries? Are you aware of anything? Because I know a lot of people do saunas, a lot of people do massages. There's the cold water, the cold air, there's all different type of things. Have you seen anything with that?
I mean, a lot of our guys do, excuse me, do the ice baths.
Yeah, the ice baths.
Excuse me, I mentioned that.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm really big on stretching and breathing.
So kind of like a yoga, because yoga is big about stretching and breathing. And
yeah, I mean, a little bit of yoga, but just how do I say this? I'm gonna cough. Can you edit this, or is this just go all
it's
out?
just gonna go, and I could probably edit it, don't worry about it. So if you're talking about stretching, you know, I get the idea. What you're trying to say is, I'll try to talk for you while you battle that cough, is that the stretching, being more limber, will help you. But I'm interested in the breathing. Why is the breathing important?
I think as we get older, we breathe less. I watched an interview. Excuse me. I watched an interview with a coach, a breathwork coach. When we're young, we're active. We breathe a lot.
Yeah.
Excuse me. As we get older, we become more sedentary. We sit in a cubicle, we sit at a desk. Most people aren't really active. The beauty with jiu-jitsu, you breathe a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why Hickson Gracie had that whole breathing thing that you see him do. And that was like a big part of his training. I forgot what they call it. Is it like fire breathing or something? He has some kind of name for it. Yeah. But he basically like sucks in his whole like rib cage. That guy's like, when it comes to breathing, it is amazing. And I remember him saying in an interview, something about your heartbeat per minute. He felt that if he could lower his, so let's just say you guys are at full speed in competition, and if the average person's heartbeat at full speed competition is, let's just say 180, if he could maintain his to 170, that was a big plus for him. The advantage was for him now to be, you know, to overtake his opponent because of the controlling of the breathing and the heart rate.
Yeah, so breathing, one of the first things we always tell students, because everybody, when they first start jiu-jitsu, they hold their breath.
Yeah.
Which just wipes you out. So I just try to tell people, be mindful of your breathing. So before class, after class, I take these big, I stretch. Part of stretching is making sure it helps my lower back because of my hips, that I get both my legs. It's not so much that I'm trying to stretch my hamstrings, just keep my body in proper,
Alignment.
yes. And then I open my chest up just to get as much oxygen in as possible. Because when you're under pressure, you're just trying to pull oxygen from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But maximizing your oxygen intake, I mean, I know it speaks volumes, the ability to breathe and to breathe under pressure and to not swallow air. I mean, all these things, they help your performance. But this breathing coach, she goes, as we get older, we tend to breathe less. We pull in less oxygen. And she goes, that accelerates the aging process.
Mm-hmm.
And that just struck a chord with me. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. And it took my wife a little bit of time to catch on, because she always thought I was stressed out, because she'd hear me walk around the house and I would just take these huge, deep breaths. And I do that when I drive. I have a pretty decent commute to the academy. So I'll just sit there and it calms you, and it's just, I think overall, it just feels good to just, how many times do we actually take it a point during our day to just sit there and just like take 2 or 3 deep breaths, and you'll feel it immediately just lower, So those are the things for me. It's like, it's almost like the flip side for all the intensity of the training is the kind of the calmness. It's almost meditative.
Yeah.
But doing that, I lay on the mat, stretch my legs out, stretch my arms out, take deep breaths. Those are the things that really help a lot for me now.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Thank you very much for sharing all that. Cause I definitely need to work on more breathing and more stretching. And I mean, that's just amazing, man. I mean, I really appreciate you coming on here. Everything that you've shared, you just being the kind of guy that you are. It's amazing, man. Thank you so much, Jay.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. It's been too long. I hope we can do this again soon. And thank you for having me on.